I'm joined today by Andrew Hawkins. Hello, Andrew.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Andy.
Yeah, we have a similar name, which is
We
fun,
do indeed, yes.
but different ways of using it. Okay, so we actually met at Big Church Festival
Mm,
2024. Let's just go there very first.
mm.
How was the festival for you? Have you been before? What's your experience of festivals generally? Now, how did you find Big Church? Because it's my first festival ever, and I was just blown away.
Yes, I have been previously, both attending and exhibiting. This is the first time exhibiting for Leading the Way. I don't believe that the organisation has ever been to Big Church Festival before, and I found it highly engaging. We had probably around 2,000 people past our stand during the weekend, and so much literature given out, many different conversations, connections with people like yourself. So it was a really rewarding time down there in West Sussex.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I loved it. We were there invited by Barnabas Aid to
Mm.
join them. So we volunteered with them and we got on site and stuff. And it was, I've never been to a festival since I was probably 13 or 14, which is, 3 decades ago. So for me,
Mm.
it was amazing. But the whole Marquee area with all the different people there, it's just so
Yes,
exciting to see so many people who love Jesus and
yes,
different ways of worshiping. Yes, of course, but different ways of serving him through
yes, yeah.
so many different ministries that were there.
That's right. Such a diversity of ministries. I think it's a unique festival, one of the largest festivals, certainly in Europe. You have people traveling from European countries that we met. So they come over to us, especially for that festival.
Cool. Okay, so leading the way is how I actually met you at Big Church.
Mm,
Just give us a bit of a thing about that for people who've not heard of that, or maybe have an impression of part of it. What is leading the way?
yes. So Leading the Way began back in the 1980s, founded by Dr. Michael Youssef, who's Egyptian, originates from Egypt, lived in Lebanon for a while before then moving to Australia, where he studied theology. And that's where he met his wife Elizabeth. And the Lord led them then to the US, to Atlanta, Georgia, where he founded Church of the Apostles, a large church in Atlanta. And then a year later, Leading the Way was birthed. And it just began at that stage as a small Atlanta-based radio ministry, but it's grown significantly over 35 plus years. Dr. Youssef's Bible teachings are now broadcast across 6 continents in 28 different languages across many different radio and television platforms. So it's grown hugely, and there's other different aspects to the ministry as well.
I mean, I know of leading the way because I know of Dr. Michael Youssef. I can kind of see his face and think, yeah, I know who that is.
Mm.
And I've heard some of his sermons. I've seen some of those. So what are some of the other elements that leading the way has for people?
So, from Leading the Way has also come a few other ministries over the years. One is our Kingdom Sat channel, our very own satellite channel that broadcasts into the Muslim world, the Middle East and North Africa, 22 Arabic speaking countries. And we have about 2,000 inquiries a month. 1,000 or so of those are from Muslims. So that's really impacting the Muslim world, that tailored broadcasting to the Muslim world. We also have a little device that goes around the world called a navigator. It's pocket sized, it's solar paneled. It contains the New Testament and 150 of Dr. Youssef's teachings, and it comes in different languages as well. And thousands have been distributed around the world. So recently, Indonesia received 5,000. Senegal has had 3,800 delivered recently. 5,000 is going to Albania soon. And there's preparations for Bangladesh, 15,000 to Bangladesh and 10,000 to Pakistan. So it's really reaching countries where it can be difficult for Bibles and missionaries to enter. But these devices are accepted and they're reaching very remote regions of these countries. And then we've also got evangelistic celebrations. More recently, Dr. Youssef is actually going to the nations and preaching the gospel. So we've had evangelistic events in the US, in Mexico, in Ireland last September, and in Egypt. And yeah, more are being planned. So they're some of the other ways that we're reaching the world.
It's so good. I spoke to Eugene back to Jerusalem, who,
Yeah.
in some similar ways, they've done some amazing technological things to get the
Yes.
Bible into countries where it just cannot be without
Exactly.
risking the life of the person who holds it. So I
Yes.
get
Yeah.
very excited when I hear about any organization who is saying, how can we deal with this? How can we help? How can we support? How can we get Bibles into this nation?
Yes. And also in the UK, because of course now the world is here in the UK, living amongst us, and they need reaching as well. So the navigators are being used by some churches in the UK to reach different people groups as well.
Yeah, it's superb. We need tools though, don't we?
Yeah.
It's all very well to say, okay, the Bible's all you need, Jesus is all you need, but then there's kind of this, yeah, but what do I do? And having a
Mm,
tool that can actually enable us to start a conversation can be such
mm.
such an important thing.
Yes, and it's one way of many ways that we can reach people.
Yeah. Now we were mentioning just before we started talking for this about your trip to Dublin. So just give
Yes.
us a bit of an overview because that's one of the examples of what Leading the Way's done, and then you've got
Yeah.
some amazing results as well. So what happened last
Yeah.
September?
So last September, we had two events, major events, evangelistic in Dublin and in Belfast. So a program of live music, live testimonies from significant people, well known in Ireland. And then Dr. Youssef came and preached the gospel and then invited a response at the end. And we had many, especially in Dublin, many came forward to receive Christ as Lord and Saviour. But there was a whole program leading up to that. I mean, it was like a year's investment before September of visiting each country and engaging, connecting with the leaders, training the church in evangelism, preparing the church in prayer as well. So prayer movements started and are continuing today. And Dr. Youssef flew in for pastors' lunches as well in both locations. So there was a lot of investment before the event, and then the event was kind of the culmination of everything. And then, of course, the follow-up afterwards. And all the people who made commitments were referred to local churches. And it did feel like a local church event. You know, Christians invited guests along. We didn't just bus people from here, there, and everywhere. People just came of their own accord and brought their guests along, which is what we were encouraging from the start. And as a result of that, I visited Dublin over the weekend. One church there received a number of referrals and has since then witnessed multiple salvations and baptisms and church
Wow.
growth. It's like a wave of the Holy Spirit is moving in that church, and they're having to adjust and adapt the way they do church as a result.
It's so good. And I love the way that you're working with local churches rather than doing a
Mm,
big campaign, which has its own merits. But
yes.
me, particularly, I've worked in churches. I love the local church doing stuff locally
Mm,
because at the end of the day, they know their community. And if you can go
yes.
in through a local church, you've already got lots of contacts and lines of communication which are already pre-existing.
Yeah, and these events kind of galvanized the local churches. They worked in unity, especially in Dublin. They've not had a large evangelistic event. We're talking like 2000. It wasn't, um, huge, but it was significant, and it just brought together the pastors in a new way. Especially the lunch we had with Dr. Youssef, there was virtually every senior leader there in the room across Ireland, which was just amazing.
And that's probably a miracle in itself, having worked for
Yes,
churches. Just, I
exactly.
mean, calendars, forget politics. I mean, just getting everyone's calendars to combine is
Yes.
huge.
But it took a lot of work, a lot of effort, flying over there every month, um, with the executive committee meetings and all the necessary engagement.
So, what's your involvement with this organization? I mean, how did you come to work for them?
So I've been working with them for 2 years now. I started out as the UK Europe Celebrations Director. So that was directing events like Ireland and exploring possibilities for the future events around UK Europe. And then 8 months ago, Dr. Youssef asked me to actually become the UK Europe Director of all ministries in the UK Europe region. So that's what I'm now doing in this role.
With, I guess, a little bit of travel as part of that.
Yeah, it's not too much travel, more so with celebrations, but now it's yes, it's more home based, but still need to obviously go out and make known the ministry. That's what it's been about in this role for me. Just going to these festivals like Big Church Festival. We're exhibiting in Wales at the ABBA conference very shortly. We're exhibiting at Christian Resources exhibition. We're trying to really make known the ministry as much as possible so that people can connect with us and be blessed by Dr. Youssef's amazing Bible teaching and support us in our endeavors to spread the gospel around the world.
Cool, thank you. Right, let's go back a little bit in time for you,
Mm,
because I love to learn not just about what you're doing now, which is really interesting, but also what's your journey into faith. Because one of the
mm,
things I'm really passionate about is our story of meeting Jesus is very
mm.
personal.
Yeah,
And what I love about it particularly is that no one can argue with it. They can disagree with it, but they can't argue with it because
that's
it's
right.
our story. So, what is your story of faith?
Mm. Well, I had a really blessed childhood. So I grew up in Cambridge, Cambridgeshire, and was there for 19 years. I was always attending church with my family every Sunday. I actually enjoyed going to church in my youth. I had the influence of Boys Brigade and Crusaders, as it was, now Urban Saints. And that strongly influenced my life. I sung in a choir there. I played a musical instrument, the trombone, and I just was really kind of sent by my parents out into all these different kind of organizations. And I thought I had an amazing childhood. But it was only at the age of 17, around 16, 17, that a young missionary came alongside me at church in Cambridge where we were attending and explained Two Ways to Live, that little booklet, Two Ways to Live. And he drew diagrams and he explained, either going your own way, which leads to death, or you're going the way of Christ that leads to life eternal. And the name of that young missionary at that time, he wasn't ordained, is Rico Tice,
Okay.
from was at All Souls Church, Langham Place. And he really impacted me, and I made a personal commitment. I knew that I couldn't follow my parents to church. I needed to personally commit my life to the Lord at that stage. And then I went off to university, and that's where it really kind of took hold more. And I walked with the Lord there, and it sort of led then into ministry.
Fab. We'll come back to the ministry in a second, but
Mm,
that difference of being raised in a church environment, a Christian focused family, even.
mm,
I remember when I was working in churches, and people would say, "How do I get my children to come to church?" I said,
yeah.
"Well, that's the wrong question. How can you introduce your children to Jesus is the better
Yes, yeah.
question, because if you do that, you won't be bringing them to church; they'll be dragging you to church."
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think sometimes we ask the wrong question, don't we?
Yes, yes, that's right. No, they invested in me. They didn't push it hard, but they encouraged it. And yeah, then someone came alongside me from outside the church and led me to the Lord.
Which is such an important thing, though. It's that there is a choice to be made.
Yes.
And if we don't tell people, they don't know what they don't know. I know we all know
Mm.
of Jesus, but if we don't know, we don't know.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, so that was my sort of early days. But then going to university was really foundational. Excuse the pun because I studied architecture. So, but I remember when I arrived at university, on the first day, there was some event in the bar and everyone was going to get, consume alcohol and get drunk. But I walked out of that bar to the Christian meeting I knew that was taking place, and I took a stand for Christ. And that was the beginning of serving the Lord um, there and in ministry afterwards.
So let's come back to that ministry. What is the ministry life been like for you? Is that full time? Is that just working in a church as one of the members?
So it's been full time since I left university. I started with a church in Wandsworth, serving as a lay assistant minister through the Church Pastoral Aid Society for a couple of years. That led me into London City Mission for 16 years in a couple of ministries there. And then I've since been around a number of different organizations, Billy Graham Association, Luis Palau Association, Canon J. John Christian Concern, and now leading the way with Dr. Michael Youssef. It's like one step has led to another. Obviously, in this type of events ministry, the experience has been gained, and others want to use that experience, shall we say.
Yeah, because we've all got different skills, we've got different
Yeah.
gifts and experiences, and I do love how God doesn't just dump us in a place and say off you go. I
Mm.
love how He made us with purpose and on purpose, but He actually makes us with our own desires, and actually that often forms part of how we serve Him.
Yes, yes. And I've still got a couple of volunteer ministries that have through the years developed. So with London City Mission, at one stage I was a police chaplain, and I've kept that role for 22 years now, locally where we are based in London here, and I patrol with the officers and wear body armor and uniform, and that's how the role has always been, very, very proactive, out with the troops on shift and dealing with all the difficult and challenging situations and being a support to them. So I love that role, keeps me in touch with the real world, as a voluntary chaplain, and I'm also the London Wing chaplain for the Royal Air Force Air Cadets. So I supervise chaplaincy across London Wing, and try and bring in other local church leaders into chaplaincy where they're based, to different squadrons. So yeah, really, a lot happening, but it's all of the Lord, the way the Lord's opened the doors over the years.
I think that opening the door thing now, that's really key to what we do, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
this is them. I say this so many times, but it's very easy to push hard and
Mm,
to create opportunities and doors
yeah,
where God didn't necessarily want us to find one,
that's right.
but we
And
should work hard for him.
that's right. These doors have swung open over the years, and especially the police role. I was reminded of that verse in Revelation, I will open a door that no one can shut. It's felt like that every time, you have new borough police commanders, new inspectors, but I keep getting welcomed, and they love the support that I can give them.
Which is unique. And of course, as we're having these interviews, we've got riots around the UK. The police are always going to be stretched in these moments.
Mhm.
And I would imagine for you as a chaplain, these are the times when it's even more important for all the work you've done.
Yes.
This is where it really meets the reality, isn't it?
That's right. And they often don't have someone that they can just independently, talk to, offload their issues, um, seek advice. And I'm there for all of that, really, as well as on shift. The other dynamic is, of course, I'm attending all the emergency calls, and I'm there on hand. And so I'm experiencing all that they're experiencing as well, and sometimes take the emotional strain off their backs, which is good.
Which is huge. And I think it's too easy to think, oh, they are the police. But, the
Mm.
police service is made up of men and women who are trying to
Yeah.
do their job.
Yeah, as we say, it's ordinary people doing an extraordinary job. Yeah, so they are, family people, and they suffer all that we suffer, experience, and have to deal with their job, the challenges they face.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Just coming back to leading the way, then you said about how you came from, was it Christian concern into this role?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. So what made you think this is an interesting opportunity to apply into?
Well, they approached me. That's been the case a lot over the years.
Oh wow.
So they approached me and said we need someone to direct events in UK, Europe. At that time, it's a new initiative that Dr. Youssef was launching to actually go to the nations and preach the gospel. And again, with experience from past organisations in events, directing and co-directing with Billy Graham and Louis Plough and J. John, the Just One events. That's how the door opened, really, just with that experience.
Which I think is a really good life lesson of when you are trying to serve God, it's very easy to think, I need to do this, I must do that, let's go here.
Yes,
But
yes,
actually, one of the scriptures I really love is don't assume you're going to go to this city and do business and you go to that city and do that business because
right.
we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And actually, when we walk in the spirit, when we actually allow God the honor of directing our
Mm,
steps,
yes,
everything gets so much more exciting.
yes. And I've learnt to never say never to the Lord. When I was at Nottingham University where I studied to be an architect, I said, Lord, never London. I'm never going to London. And where have I been ever since? In London. And also I've learned, I mean, more recently, I have pushed doors at times and been interviewed for various roles, but it's never actually worked out. It's the Lord that has made things happen. I've just had to wait and be still and trust in Him.
Yeah, be still and know that I am God.
Yeah,
That's a favorite for so many people. But
yeah,
when you start to consider the words of that, yeah, knowing God is great, but it's that being still part. And actually, if we
mm,
stop herring through life,
yes,
those are the precious moments of when God. It's not that it's easier for Him to talk to us, but it's easier for us to hear what He's trying to say to us.
yes, yes, that's right. So wait on the Lord, and there's delay for a purpose, at times, and we just got to rest in Him and allow Him to work out His purposes and plans for our lives, and He's got it all sorted. We just got to be dependent on Him more.
Amen. And trust His timing, which is the kind of key
Yeah,
point, isn't it?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I used to say I used to like to help God out as a way of trying to explain how I was trying to do life. And then you
Yeah,
realize God doesn't need our help. He actually
no,
chooses and desires to have our help. And that's a
yes,
very different mentality.
yeah, and also to be available. And that's He's looking for people who not necessarily able, but just available to Him. As I've heard a number of times, God does not call the equipped; He equips the called. And I think
Amen.
that's really important to learn as well.
So, what is your week Is there an average week for you? I'm guessing possibly not.
No, not at all. It varies so much from week to week. There can be surprises along the way. Obviously, I'm involved at my local church. I've been discipling 3 young men through a course this year. We're blessed to have a number of new believers at our church who need that kind of care, and I've been pouring out my life into theirs. So that's been a real blessing. But there's always the sort of regular activities of the week, but there's also those sort of surprise activities, like going to Dublin, for instance, at the weekend. That was very last minute just because of what the Lord is doing there. So you just got to be kind of on standby, ready, allowing time in your diary for what might happen next, but obviously planning ahead as much as well.
Yeah, I can totally understand that completely.
Yeah.
And I just remember actually when I went to, I did a year out after school, and I said, "Okay, God, I'll go anywhere, but not a Pentecostal church." I had a fantastic time at a Pentecostal church in Manchester,
Yeah.
which really knocked some edges off me. And yeah, that never say never thing. It's
Yeah.
important to go where God's calling, because I met some lovely people, and it really, I was a Baptist, as you know, growing up, and that's what I am, and I'm a Baptist. And do you know
Yeah.
what? I would never say that ever again. I'm now a follower of Jesus Christ,
Yes.
and
Yes.
but you
And
know, arrogance of youth.
And that's been the same for us, really, as a family. I mean, we settled in this area where we are now in Romford, Essex. We found the house first, and then we found, sorry, the church first, and then we found the house nearby. So we felt that we were led to this church where we've been now for 12 years. And yeah, that's a kind of a good perspective, I think, to find the right church, a Bible-based church for us,
Hmm.
with a good balance, and that's where we are.
Fantastic. Okay, let's come back to leading the way, which is how we where we met from, how we met. So what's leading the way got coming up in, I don't know, the next 3 to 6 months that would be of interest to people? Where can actually they hear Dr. Michael
Yes.
Youssef's teachings?
Well, yes, I mean, connect with us by all means. And the website ltw.org is a great place to go to find out what's happening. We do have a 5-year plan that's about to be launched. And that's something that has not been kind of disclosed yet, but it's going to be launched very soon, and that'll be on the website and in our magazine, My Journal. People can subscribe to that magazine, and they'll kind of learn more about what's happening in the coming years. But as well, people obviously can hear us on radio and television, Premier Christian Radio, Daystar, TBN UK, and also Dr. Youssef is live on a Sunday afternoon at 3:30 from Atlanta, where he preaches. So you can go to the mobile app, is great, Leading the Way app. Go to the App Store, download the app, and you've got all his messages on there, as well as the live content and daily devotionals as well, which I use personally and my wife. So there's just so much that you can access. So I'd encourage you to do that. Yeah.
Fab. So just for people listening, just give us that website one last time.
Yes, it's LTW for Leading the Way, ltw.org.
Andrew Hawkins, thank you for leading the way, for just sharing some time, some of what's going on, and your own faith story, which for me is always such a passion. And if you want to know more about leading the way, go to ltw.org for all the things you need, and get the app. We love the app. Apps are good.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Andy, for the opportunity this morning.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye for now.
Goodbye.